In this video, I'm going to show you how to take the data from the first video that we put into first normal form and get it into second normal form. Now, in the last video, we didn't have this invoice ID. So what we've done is we've added the invoice ID to the table. And what you can see here is that in the invoice table, okay, to get to second normal form, we don't want to have, repeated primary keys. So since this is the invoice table, we could use this column as the primary key. It is a surrogate key that we created, okay, by just adding a number. Invoice number here is the natural primary key. But we'll assume that we've decided on this as the primary key. So the reason that we're not in second normal form is because the primary key should never have repeating values like this. So what we need to do is we need to break our data out into more than one table to accomplish that. Okay. So you notice here we've got invoice sequences. So these three items are on invoice number 1 here. So the way we accomplish that is we create a new table. So this table up here has the invoice number, the vendor name, and the invoice ID. So we can just call this invoice. Okay. And what we've done is we've taken the line items and put them in a new table. And if you look at our AP database, I've called it invoice line item. What we've done is now that in the invoice table, the primary key only appears one time, and that's the way it should be. And then what we've done in invoice line item is we've created a foreign key relationship. We've created a foreign key relationship to invoice line items. So this is the primary key. Well, actually we've made this the primary key. And so let's go like that. And then in this table, invoice ID is the foreign key. Okay. So go like that. It's a one to many. Many relationship. Okay. Now it's okay if foreign keys are repeated because they're just pointers to the primary key. So then we have to look at invoice line item and say, what's the primary key here? Well, it can't be invoice ID because that's repeated. It can't be invoice sequence because that's repeated. It's actually the intersection, the combination of invoice ID and invoice sequence. So for example, the combination of 1 and 3 make this row unique. Okay, so the same thing with these other columns. And this is what's called a composite primary key. Okay, so the combination of invoice ID and invoice sequence creates what's called a composite primary key. So in our next video, we'll talk about how to get to third normal form.